There's a question that comes up time and time again in the comments sections of my videos, especially in the ones dealing with low magic and the various entities that a magic practitioner calls on to produce any given effect. That question is, why go through all the trouble of the studies and the rituals, and even in some cases potential risk, when you could simply ask God directly? In some cases, the way the question's asked is just purposefully offensive. In some cases, they see an opportunity to point out their own superiority. But in most cases, they're just curious. If such a simple solution exists, what might lead someone to take a more complex, more complicated route? This video is for the latter group, the ones who genuinely want to know. A little disclaimer here maybe, the answers that I provide in this video are my own answers. One of the blessings of being a magic practitioner is that you get to think for yourself, and many may have views that are very different from or even opposite to mine. Naturally, if you're curious about what their answers might be, the best way to find out is to ask them, or just scroll down to the comments section. Because it is a legitimate question. After all, the very first of the 10 Commandments says, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." I've mentioned in the past that the tradition through which I entered magic in the first place was in fact Christianity, and I am a monotheist. However, I don't mean that in the same way as many people mean it, specifically those people who've come to monotheism because they learnt as a child that their tradition expects them to be monotheists. Now, this doesn't always happen, but there seems to be an inordinate proportion of such people for whom monotheism means something like this. There's only one God, because my God's better than all the other gods. He's stronger, he's kinder, he's bigger, he's the one that my tribe agrees is the best, he's the one that my mum agrees is the best, he's the one my 6th grade teacher agrees is the best. All the other gods in the other religions either don't come close in terms of how awesome he is, or they're just plain evil and actually they're just the devil disguised as gods to lead people astray. My God's perfect in every way, though there is that one entity that my God's clearly having a spot of trouble with right now, and sure, by right now I basically mean since the beginning of time, but don't worry about that, trust me. My God is omnipotent, so he'll win in the end, and then we'll all live in a beautiful colour crayon illustration from the Watchtower magazine. Just you wait and see, it's going to be just the best. Well, you won't, because you pray to other gods, so that's kind of your problem. I actually became a teacher of religious studies precisely to teach even a handful of people that this isn't what Christianity was intended to be. And I strongly believe that if Jesus had ever met any of the revered Christian philosophers, Augustine, Aquinas, who spent so much time and effort applying their great minds to the defense of this strange model, I don't think he'd have necessarily thanked them for their service. So no, when I say that I'm a monotheist, that's not the model that I believe in at all. The model that makes sense to me is a single consciousness within which all of what we perceive to be the unfolding of time and space exists. And that includes us, little sensor beings that we are. Now, when I think of my own experimentations and my own experience, the model that most consistently fits the evidence that I can work out is that there is in fact one all-encompassing divinity. And when I say all-encompassing, I mean all-encompassing. Not just all-encompassing of the things that I consider good. All-encompassing means everything, with all the implications that come with that statement, from the most excellent points of perfection to the deepest, vilest horrors of evil. My experience is that this one God is in fact too complex, too contradictory, too paradoxical to be comprehended by the logical mind, the thinking frontal cortex. And it's only in the throes of ecstatic states that we might catch a glimpsed impression, completely overwhelming and light years away from the kinds of experiences that human language was designed to describe. I think Blaise Pascal said it best in his journal on Monday 23rd November 1654. From about 10:30 at night until about midnight, midnight, fire, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, not of the philosophers and of the learned. That kind of experience isn't just overwhelming, it's all-consuming. It completely takes over, and it's completely incompatible with the daily business of keeping your body alive, let alone presentable, and leading a healthy existence on Earth. So, as I see it, we have 4 choices. Choice number 1. We pursue a phony version of God, a version that somehow can't keep the devil under control, but actually it's for our own good and salvation, because how can there be good without evil, and whatever else helps you to confirm that your religion is the only right one. Again, I can sympathize with this, but I can't follow it in good conscience. Choice number 2. Have a permanent connection with the one source of all being, but forget about any kind of life on Earth. People around you consider you to be crazy, you lose your job, you lose your friends, you lose your family, you lose your home, you lose your ability to interact with anyone, and eventually you lose your life. I mean, that's the dream, right? As long as someone else can drive the kids to school. Choice number 3. You reject all of that and focus on the one thing that really matters: vintage analog synthesizer modules. Who needs God when you've got a Yamaha CS80? Or finally, choice number 4, you focus on a specific aspect of God at any one time. There are many systems, some very simple, that divide God into 7 main aspects, some 10 main aspects, some use 12, some use 72. All of these also have variants where these numbers are doubled for the shadow side of each of these aspects. The Indian systems have a myriad of gods. But while some Hindus are indeed polytheists, the concept of Brahman being the universal cosmic origin of which all gods are aspects is well documented in the Vedas and the early Upanishads. The various forms of Tantra also recognize gods as being aspects of the one universal God. It turns out that this form of Hinduism may in fact be more monotheistic than the phony form of Christianity that I was talking about at the beginning of this video. And as I mentioned in a previous, rather popular video, thanks by the way to everyone who watched that and who took the time and trouble to click the like button there, and for all of your awesome comments too. So yes, as I was saying in this previous video, I strongly suspect that most of modern Western magic traditions are basically a reskin of Tantra. So yes, much of the Tantric philosophy and cosmogony and theology is necessarily going to apply to my practice. As luck would have it, just as I was starting to write the script for this video, I also happened to be reading Frater Acher's excellent new book, Clavis Goetica, published by Hadean Press. You can watch my recent review of that through the links down below. It's really an extraordinary book. And in the 4th chapter there, he describes exactly this setup around the Greek central mother goddess Gaia, with a really quite beautifully evocative metaphor, using the image of the vertical wall of a giant water dam. He writes, "Behind this wall resides a massive amount of power in potential. Over millennia of evolution, smart humans managed to build valves into this massive wall. Thus, humans learnt to leverage the water pressure behind the wall through specific power access points, which in return have become controllable. Depending on which valve is opened and for how long, we get a certain kind of pressure and quality of water. And with that, we can work with whatever kind of water pleases us. Attempting to work with the mother in an unconditioned manner would equate to turning ourselves into such a valve. Rather than leveraging specific later god forms to mediate and channel the raw atavistic power that sits at the center, we would choose to expose ourselves to this unshaped and raw consciousness." Frater Acher's book is filled with such evocative imagery, and I thoroughly recommend checking it out. So that's the main reason for speaking to aspects of God rather than straight to God. So when you ask me why I interact with angels and occasionally with demons instead of going straight to God, to me your question sounds a little bit like, why do I get my frozen peas from the freezer aisle, when I could just go to the supermarket? Or why do I get my popcorn at the concessions stand when I could just go to the cinema? Hopefully that can provide some clarity if you were one of the people wondering. If you enjoy the content I create here, probably the most helpful thing that you can do is to simply click the like button on my videos and share your thoughts in the comments below. That invariably makes an enormous difference. If you're interested in getting access to the Foolish Fish Discord server, membership starts at $2 a month, and you can find out more about those by clicking the join button just next to the subscribe button, or by following the links in the description. Please remember that the topics we discuss here can be sensitive for some people, so just a reminder to be your usual kind, considerate selves and be mindful of each other in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and see you very soon with another video.